Hey you all, it's Mrs. Crollo. Today we are going to talk about reading a recipe. I'm going to talk about abbreviations, how to actually read our abbreviations within our recipe, different conversion techniques, and we're going to start off by watching this video.
So we use math when we were measuring, and we converted some of the amount of ingredients into fractions so that it would be easier to measure. And we also learned that when it's a bigger T, it means tablespoons, but when it's a lowercase t, it stands for teaspoons. And that would help me if I'm at home trying to cook and I actually put in like too much of something. So we use
Cuties. All right, let's talk about decoding the recipe. So as we start to cook, it's going to be very important that you understand abbreviations. So recipes often employ abbreviations to save space and streamline instructions. Mastering these common shorthands is crucial for accurate interpretation. One of the biggest issues that we have in our classes is deciphering the little t and the big T. Okay, so a lowercase t or TSP is going to be your teaspoon, where your capital T or TBSP is going to be your larger equivalent, which is your tablespoon. Our little c is going to be cup, PT is pint, which is equal to 2 cups. Our QT is quart, 4 cups or 2 pints. GAL is gallon, not G. G would stand for grams, so GAL is gallon, and that's equivalent to 16 cups, 8 pints, or 4 quarts. OZ is ounce, so this usually refers to a set volume or weight. LB is pound, a unit of weight equivalent to about 16 ounces, which also could be figured to about 2 cups. DOZ is dozen, which is 12. MIN is minute. HR is hour. And then we do use Fahrenheit for units of temperature. All right, so let's talk about accurate measurement. Accurate measurement is fundamental to baking and many cooking processes. Different ingredients require different measuring techniques. So we have talked a little bit about this already. We should never ever see you putting dry ingredients into a liquid measuring cup. Okay, our liquid measuring cups are glass. It's important that you have that liquid measuring cup on a flat surface. Do not lift it and pour. You want it on a flat surface at eye level. Dry ingredients, so we have our small amounts, which are going to be in our measuring spoons. That's either small amounts of liquid or dry ingredients, and this is where we have that teaspoon, half a teaspoon, a fourth of a teaspoon, or a tablespoon, and you would use a level straight edge to make sure that you have an accurate amount, unless it's a liquid. And then our large amount dry ingredients are measuring cups that come in 1 cup, a fourth of a cup, a third of a cup, and a half of a cup. Okay, you want to avoid scooping directly from the container, especially with flour. It's important that you're spooning in that flour and then leveling off. Okay, and then fat. So if it's a liquid fat like oil, you would use either a liquid measuring cup, or if it's a small amount, you would use a measuring spoon. And then a lot of times we have butter that's already measured out for you. Shortening, you would have to measure out, and that is usually done with a dry measuring cup. And you would probably need like a rubber spatula to really push that down into your measuring cup. Butter though, a stick of butter is 8 tablespoons or a half of a cup. All right, this guy right here, this is the mighty Mr. Gallon. This is a good visual aid to kind of remember what is in a gallon. So you can always, until you kind of memorize how many cups or pints or quarts are in a gallon, you could use this visual aid to help you out. But as you can see, there are 16 cups in a gallon. There are 8 pints in a gallon and 4 quarts in a gallon. Okay, so why is accurate measurement so important? We talked a little bit about measuring accurately, specifically for our class because we do purchase just enough for everyone. We are on a budget, so we don't want to be wasteful. We don't want to take more than is necessary just because we do get just enough for every single kitchen. However, especially in baking, it is super important to have accurate measurements. While some experienced cooks may adjust by instinct, precise measurements are critical for several reasons, especially in baking. So you can have chemical reactions. So if you add too much leavening agents like baking soda, baking powder, this can cause an inaccurate rise or texture. You can have some bubbling over in the oven, so you always want to make sure that you are measuring these things accurately. Flavor balance is very important. A lot of times we get mismeasurement of salt, and that would definitely change the flavor profile. Consistency, so accurate measurement ensures that a recipe turns out the same way each time. You want avoiding any type of failure, so incorrect measurement can lead to flat cakes, tough cookies, salty sauces, and then scaling. So understanding equivalent allows for accurate doubling, halving of recipes without compromising the final product. We always want our final products to look really nice, really uniform, so it's important to follow the recipe accurately. Okay, these are visual aids to kind of help with conversion. So as you get into some of our advanced classes, we might have you convert a recipe. It's also really important too because some of these measurements we do not have. We don't have a 3/4 of a cup. We don't have an 1/8 of a cup. So it's important to kind of know what goes into measuring to get some of those measurements. So we don't have an 1/8 of a cup, so you could use 2 tablespoons to measure out an 1/8 of a cup. Okay, so some things that I want you to remember in your brains are that 3 teaspoons go into 1 tablespoon. Okay, so just things that I always want you to, like, kind of like how you know 2 + 2 is 4, I want you to know 3 teaspoons go into 1 tablespoon. There's 4 tablespoons in 1/4 of a cup. There are 16 cups in 1 gallon, 2 cups in a pint, 8 tablespoons in 1 stick of butter. Okay, so when I say, oh, how many cups is 1 stick of butter? That's going to be 1/2 of a cup. So 2 sticks is 1 cup. Okay. All right, so let's go over some of these measurements. Let's practice. So how many teaspoons are in 4 tablespoons? Let's just think about that for a second. 4 tablespoons. How many teaspoons? So remember, 3 teaspoons go into 1 tablespoon. So 4 tablespoons would equal to 12 teaspoons. All right, number 2, how many cups are in 3 pints? So I did say that 2 cups are already in a pint. So your answer for this question would be 6 cups. How many quarts are in 2 gallons? So remember there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So your answer for question number 3 is going to be 8 quarts. If a recipe calls for 1/2 a cup, how many tablespoons is that? That's going to be 8 tablespoons. So remember 4 tablespoons are in 1/4 of a cup. So to get 1/2 a cup, you would need 8 tablespoons. And then our last question, you need 6 cups of broth. How many quarts do you need to measure? So 6 cups, there's 4 cups in a quart. So that's going to be 1.5 quarts. All right. Recipe remix, so doubling and cutting back. So often you'll need to adjust a recipe to serve more or fewer people. Okay, we call this a conversion, and it involves you scaling the recipe, either multiplying or dividing your quantities. Okay, so doubling to make twice as much, where halving would be to make half as much. Okay, it's important to consider whether your cookware is appropriate sized for the adjusted quantity and whether cooking times may need to slightly be adjusted. All right, so let's go through this recipe here. This is just a basic chocolate chip cookie recipe, and we want to double it. We want more cookies. Okay, so we have 1/2 cup of butter, which is also 1 stick of butter. So you're gonna need 1 cup of butter to double it, or 2 sticks of butter. 3/4 of a cup sugar, to double it, that's gonna be 1.5 cup. 1 large egg is gonna be 2 eggs. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, that's gonna be 2 teaspoons. We have 1.5 cup of all-purpose flour. To double it, we're gonna need 3 cups. 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda will now be 1 teaspoon of baking soda. 1/4 is converted to 1/2 of a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to make this recipe 2 cups of chocolate chips instead of 1 cup. Okay, we have a family-size lasagna, usually like a 9x13 pan, and we're gonna cut this in half. We're gonna make lasagna in like a 9 square pan. So we're gonna cut everything in half. So we have here 1 pound of ground beef, so that's gonna be 1/2 pound. 1/2 an onion chopped, 1 clove of garlic minced. Then we have a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. So we're gonna either take 1/2 a can, or usually the store has a 16-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Okay, now we have a 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese. We're most likely gonna take half of that container because most stores don't usually have a 7.5-ounce container. And then that 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese is going to be 1/4 of a cup, or 4 tablespoons, however you want to figure that. And then 1/4 of a cup of parsley is going to be 1/8 of a cup. You guys don't have 1/8 of a cup in your kitchen, so that's going to be 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley. Then we have 5 lasagna noodles and 1 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese instead of 1 cup. Okay, so in summary, mastering recipe math involves understanding common abbreviations, accurately using measuring tools, and knowing the relationships between different units of measurement. So always use that Mr. Gallon to kind of get those accurate measurements. The ability to double or half recipes through proportional reasoning is a crucial skill for any cook or baker, ensuring consistent results regardless of the desired serving size. Accurate measurements are not just about following instructions, they are about understanding the fundamental principles that underpin successful culinary outcomes. We are going to be using these abbreviations, these conversions, a lot of these different measurements all throughout the year. Practice makes perfect. When we get into the kitchen, that experience is going to help you remember all of this information I went over today. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get cooking.